Resourceful Designer, episode 48. What to do before starting a home-based graphic design business.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer Podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing.
And now, your host. He had a childhood crush on Lori Loughlin, Mark DeCote.
Welcome and thank you for tuning in to this episode of the podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, this is a podcast where I help you streamline your graphic design business so you can get back to what you do best, designing. Now, in case you didn't know, I am a graphic and web designer from Ontario, Canada, and I've been doing this for close to 27 years now, the past 11 of which I've been running my own home-based graphic design business. And I decided to do this podcast to help others like me in succeeding in running their own business. Now, I've had a fantastic week since the last episode came out. It's like people are coming out of the woodwork just wanting me to work on their projects. I'm almost at the point where I'm going to have to start maybe turning down some work, which is a great position to be in, especially when it comes to websites. I normally don't like to be working on more than maybe 2 or 3 websites at a time. It's just something I've always done. But now if I look at my project list of jobs I have to work on, I've got 7 websites now with contracts signed that I haven't even started working on yet. Now, I've told all these clients that it might be a few weeks before I can actually start working on their project, and they're all okay with that. So things are doing well, and that's just the web designs. I've got a bunch of other stuff. I've really been doing a lot of podcast artwork lately and some logo designs, and it's keeping me really busy. In fact, for the first time in a long time, I'm actually going to be putting in some extra hours. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know that I'm usually a 9 to 5 type of guy. I know a lot of designers work all hours of the day. But to me, when I first set up my business, I told my wife it would be a 9 to 5 job. At 5 o'clock, I would shut down. And after that, it was evening time with my family or doing whatever other tasks or chores or anything else that needed to be done. But for the first time in quite a while, I told my wife this week that I'm going to have to put in some extra hours just to keep up with the work that came in, which is really nice because a few weeks ago, things were actually a little slow. So it all balances out in the end. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about things you need to do before you actually start a home-based graphic design business. Now, I know you might have your own business. You might be running a successful business right now, and you might be thinking, well, I don't have to listen to this podcast because I already have my business going. But you might want to stick around anyways, because I'm going to cover some stuff that you might not have done when you started your business. And you know what? It's never too late. In fact, there's 1 or 2 things I'm going to talk about today that after 11 years in my business, I never did, and it might be a good idea for me to look into them as well. But these are things that people should be doing before starting a graphic design business. But before I get to that, I just want to mention, first of all, our Facebook group at resourcefuldesigner.com/group. If you're on Facebook and you haven't joined the group yet, you're missing out. Recently, we've had some great discussions about portfolios, what sort of pieces should be included and how many pieces should be included in your portfolio when you're going to interview and that sort of thing. We've also talked about discounting prices to entice a new client and whether or not you should, as well as things like pricing strategies for logo designs and all sorts of other things about running your graphic design business. So if that sounds like stuff that interests you, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/group and request to join the group. We'd love to have you there. Now, as always, I share in every podcast my resource of the week. And this week's resource is a website called Have I Been Pwned? And Pwned is spelled Pwned. And the website is haveibeenpwned.com. Now, this is a free resource for anyone to quickly assess if they may have been put at risk due to an online account of theirs having been compromised or pawned in some sort of data breach. And when they say breach, what they're talking about is any incident where a hacker illegally obtained data from a vulnerable system. And usually what they do is they would obtain that data through weaknesses in the software, and then they would make that data public. And sometimes it's credit card numbers, sometimes it's passwords and all sorts of stuff. So you go to this website and you put in your email address, and it'll tell you if your email was found in any of these credit card companies, software companies, any place that's been hacked over the past, I don't know how many years, and the hacked information has been distributed somehow, This website will tell you if your email address was included. So this is a great resource to pass along to your clients. Give them the link and tell them to check out their email addresses. And what it means is if their email address does show up, it might be a good time to change their password, especially if it's a password you've been using for years. What better incentive than finding out that somebody has obtained that password? So once again, that website is haveibeenpwned.com, and pwned is PWNED. I will include links to this in the show notes for this episode at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 48. And now, things to do before starting a home-based graphic design business. Now, back in episode 7 of the podcast, entitled Considerations When Starting a Design Business, I covered some of the topics that I'm going to talk about today. But it was mostly, you've already decided you're starting a business and you've got everything on the go. And it was more like what kind of niche you wanted to work in. It was, were you going to narrow down and be a graphic designer that only did logos, only did websites or whatever? There was some other stuff on what you wanted for your office, what type of computer you were going to use, what your hours are going to be, what your rates are going to be. That was all discussed back in episode 7, and I'll include a link to that in the show notes. Or you can visit resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 7 if you want to listen to that episode again. But in this episode, I'm going to talk more about the things you have to think about before you get to that stage. When you're just contemplating, maybe starting a home-based graphic design business might be a good idea. So let's get to it. Now, setting up a shop from your home sounds simple enough. If you have a computer, you have a place to put it, you can just sit down and start designing, and voila, you have a home-based graphic design business. But really, there's more to it than just that. That might be good if you are doing some freelance work on the side. But there's a big difference. And if you remember back in episode 17 of the podcast entitled Being a Freelance Graphic Designer Could Hurt Your Business, I talk about how the freelance, I don't like the word freelance and how it's a little bit demeaning to those running a graphic design business. If you are running a graphic design business, you are a business owner. You're not a freelancer. Somebody who just has a computer at home and from time to time does work on it, maybe to supplement their regular job, or even if it's what you do full time, but you're just doing it, you're not actually running a business. Those are freelancers. What I'm talking about today is actually starting a legitimate graphic design business, not just sitting down at your computer and designing for somebody. So I'm going to divide this into 3 different steps. First of all, the research you need to do, the things you need to get in order to start your business, and the help that you'll need. So the research. First of all, and I did discuss this in episode 7, is when you are thinking about creating a business, you have to decide what type of business structure you're going to use. Are you going to be a sole proprietorship? Are you going to create some sort of corporation, an LLC? Depending on where you are in the world, it will make a difference. And there's pros and cons to all of them, and there's different price structures to all of them. I myself am a sole proprietor. And that was actually my accountant's decision, not my decision. I was ready to incorporate, and my accountant is the one that advised me against it. He said, maybe the day will come, Mark, when we should incorporate, but until then, you're actually better running as a sole proprietor. So you have to decide that. The other options, of course, are partnerships if you're going to have somebody else. But chances are, if you're running a home-based graphic design business, it'll be just you and maybe some subcontractors that you work with. So you have to decide that. And best thing is talk to a lawyer and talk to an accountant. And I'll get to them a little bit later. Now, the other thing you need to research is your tax laws. Depending on where you are in the world, there are different tax laws regarding running a home-based business. And it's best to know these tax laws going in up front. You don't want to start trying to figure these things out when it's time to file your taxes at the end of the year. And these are the sort of things like, what can you claim as a business? What can't you claim as a business? Are you going to be using your car or your vehicle to drive to and from client meetings? If so, are you better off to purchase? Are you better off to lease? Does it make a difference if you're renting your house or if you have a mortgage or if you own it outright? All these different things are things that you really need to consider when starting a business because they will affect your bottom line. Also, when you're studying up on tax laws, the other thing is there any taxes that you have to collect? Depending on where you are in the world, you might have to charge taxes above your normal rates. Here in Ontario, there's a 13% sales tax. So whenever I send anybody an invoice, it has the total amount that I charge them plus an additional 13%. But there's rules involved with that. I know here in Ontario, there's a certain amount, and I can't remember, I think it's $30,000. If you are going to make under $30,000 within a year, you don't have to charge taxes. Don't quote me on that. I'm thinking it's 30,000. It might not be, but whatever the amount is, there's a certain amount that if you're not making that amount during the year, you don't have to charge taxes. You still can if you want, but you don't have to. But if you're making over that amount, it is required by law that you do collect taxes. And wherever you are in the world, there might be some similar tax laws involved. Now, I want to tell you a little something about collecting taxes. And again, I don't know how it is where you are, but here in Ontario, when I collect a 13%, at the end of the year, when I give all my things to my accountant and he calculates everything, including the taxes that I'm going to need to pay, a lot of times, in fact, almost every year since I've been in business, there's a certain percentage of the taxes that I collected throughout the year that I actually get to keep at the end of the year. So it's almost like some bonus income that I wasn't expecting. I collect 13% on every dollar that I charge to somebody in Ontario. See, that's another part of the tax law. Whenever I have a client that's in the US or outside of Canada, I don't need to charge them these taxes. So my US clients, I don't charge tax to. See, that's another thing. I had to research and figure that out. I don't charge taxes to them because I don't make the majority of my money in the US. Now, if it ever comes a time where most of my clients are in the US and I'm making more income from US than I am from Canada, then I might have to start charging my clients taxes, and then they would have to then contact the Canadian government for a refund. But that's not the case right now because the majority of my clients are in Canada. But as I said, signing up, registering to collect taxes is actually a really good thing. My accountant told me right from the start that I should do it. Even though we didn't know that first year how much I would be making and whether or not I needed to, he told me it was a good idea to register. And you know what? That very first year, I didn't make a lot of money, and every penny I collected in taxes, the government let me keep at the end of the year. So it was like bonus income. Now, as I said, that's my situation here in Ontario, Canada. I don't know if the situation will be the same for you wherever you are, but look into it. That's research you need to do. You have to study up on tax laws on both the taxes that you have to pay and taxes you might need to collect from your clients. Now, another thing that you have to research is zoning laws where you live. Zoning laws change depending on the city, the country, province in my case, and the situations of your business. Will you have clients going to your house? Are you planning on having employees that might work at your place? Are you going to have non-standard business hours? All these things are things that are covered usually in the zoning laws, and you have to look into them because you really don't want to get your business all set up and then be challenged by one of your neighbors or something and then being taken to court because you've breached some of the zoning laws. I know in my neighborhood here, technically, we're not allowed to run home-based businesses if clients will be visiting us on a regular basis. Now, in my case, that's fine because most of the time I go visit clients. I really don't want clients coming to see me at home here. So I will go out of my way to go visit them. But there has been some times over the years, a few clients that sometimes they want to drop off a USB stick with some photos on it, or even better, if they want to drop off a check to pay me with, they'll come and knock on my door. But they're not coming on a regular basis, so I don't have to worry about that zoning law. You also have to be aware on whether or not you're allowed to put signage out. Again, in my neighborhood, I'm not allowed to put a sign out in front of my place with the name of my business. So look into zoning laws wherever you are. And as I said, they change depending on cities, on provinces, on countries, sometimes even neighborhoods. So that's another thing to be aware of and to research before you start your business. Now, another thing you're going to want to research is your competition in the area. Just size them up. This isn't going into big detail, but just finding out who you will be competing against. Do they have a specialty? Do they niche down to a certain area? And maybe if so, you might not want to compete directly with them. I know a very talented graphic designer in my area that specializes in wedding invitations. She does other graphic design work, but she advertises herself as the wedding invitation designer. So not that I don't do wedding invitations, but it's not something I promote because she is saturating the market with her advertising about wedding promotions. So why should I compete with that? So that's the sort of thing. If you want to niche down, find out if there's somebody else in your area that is also working that niche. And if so, maybe you'll want to change it, or just find out who else is in the area. And it's never too late to do that. You can be in business already, and it's a good idea. I'm 11 years in business now, and I know that the people that were around when I first started are not all necessarily still here. And I'm sure there's some new ones that popped up. So it might even be a good idea for me to just do a little bit of research and find out who in my local area is graphic designing and web designing these days. So those are the topics I wanted to talk under researching. Study up on the tax laws, what you have to pay and what you possibly have to collect. Be aware of the zoning laws for your place. And again, if you're moving, if you've got an established graphic design business and you're moving somewhere else, this is definitely something you're going to want to look into, because you don't want to buy or build a new place in a neighborhood that won't allow you to run any sort of graphic design or any sort of business from your home at all. And it's always fun to say, well, no, who's going to know? I'm just sitting at my computer and nobody will know. But you never know when you'll get some neighbor that has some sort of beef or something happens and they decide to call you out when they find out that you work from home. So be aware of your zoning laws. And finally, size up your competition. Find out who you're up against. It never hurts. So the next thing I want to talk about is what you need to get before you start your graphic design business from home. Now, the very first one is something that is actually very important, but I must say I never got one on my own, and that's a business plan. Business plans are wonderful. I have taken some business courses, so I know about business plans. I did some in class. But when I started my graphic design business, I never really did one, or at least I never put one down on paper. I had a plan in my head, and it's still to this day, I'm still following that plan. But it is a good idea to put one down on paper. You will definitely need a business plan if you are planning on getting any loans or anything for your business. Banks and any other financial institutions or anybody that will be investing, even if you only need a few $100s for a computer or whatever, they will want to see your business plan. I was lucky in the case that I didn't need money to start up. I already had my computer, I had most of the stuff, and I had enough savings that I was able to get going without having to borrow any money. So I never wrote out a business plan, but you definitely should. I don't advise starting up your business without a business plan. So now you have your business plan. You already know how you're going to go forward. The next thing to do is register your business. You've already gone over your whole naming strategy. If you're not sure about that, listen to episode 41 of the podcast, Naming Your Graphic Design Business. On whether you have a business name or you're naming it under your own name, whatever it is, it's a good idea to register your business. Now, if you are using your own name, whether it's something like Mark DeCote or Mark DeCote Design or Mark DeCote Graphics, technically you don't need to register that. And again, I'm talking in my area. Where you live, I don't know if the rules are different, but if you're using your own name as your business, you don't necessarily have to register the name. But if you do have another name, such as Amazing Creative Agency, that definitely does have to be registered. And there's usually some sort of fee with that, and it'll require some sort of online research because the whole point of registering your name is to make sure that there's not another company with the same name as you. And you can go on however wide a scale you want. When I started my business, I did a Canadian-wide search, and there was nobody. My business name is Marksman Design. There was nobody in Canada, so I was able to register that name. Now, interestingly enough, there was a company in the US called Marksman Design, and there's also a company in the UK called Marksman Design. But I was registering within Canada, and so I was okay. It didn't matter that there was a US-based company with the same name. Now, if you're in the US, I don't know, maybe it goes by states, and in one state you can have a company with one name and another state with the same name. It all depends on how you are registered. You can register your business statewide or countrywide, just like I could have registered just in Ontario, but I registered it across Canada. And of course, there is a fee involved with registering your business, but it is something you definitely need to do before you get started. Now, once your business is registered, there are two important things you need to get. One is you're going to want to get a business permit. If you have a registered business, whether it's a sole proprietorship, a corporation, an LLC, whatever, you need to get a business permit in order to operate. And again, things may change in your neck of the woods, wherever you are, but in most places around the world, you will require some sort of permit, and yes, you will have to pay for this. And some places it might be a yearly permit. Some places it might be longer than that. I know in my case, I think it's every 7 years I have to re-register or get a new business permit. Same thing with your business name. Sorry, I didn't touch on that, but once you register your business name, please be advised that you do have to renew that on a regular basis. And when I say regular, it might be every 4, 5, 6 years, whatever the case is. But I know I actually ran into trouble that I forgot to renew my business name and I had to re-register it again. I couldn't just renew it because it had expired. I had to actually go re-register it. And there was technically 1 year that I worked where my business wasn't registered. But you will need to have your business registered, especially if you're going to be doing anything with taxes. I talked about that earlier, because part of registering for taxes is they use your business name. Whenever you register it, you're assigned a number. At least, again, that's how it is here in Canada. You're assigned a business number to go along with your business name. And that number is what you use when you're dealing with anything to do with the government. And it's the same thing if you're registering a corporation. Your corporation might have a name, but it's also assigned a number, and you will be using that number when dealing with the government. So obtain a business permit. And a lot of times the business permit are done at the municipal level. So whatever city or town you're in, that's who you contact in order to get your business permit. It's not the same as registering your business, which is done on a grander scale. The business permit is usually done and paid locally. Now, the other thing I want to talk on what you need to get is business insurance. This is something actually a lot of designers don't have, but it's one of the very first thing I got whenever I started my business. And what I actually did is I contacted the same company that I have my home insurance with, and we just added a rider onto my home insurance in order to cover the business. Because your regular homeowner's insurance will not cover your business. And when I say that, what I'm talking about is not necessarily your computer. Your computer and your equipment, your desk, that can fall under your homeowner's insurance. But something else, like say somebody comes to your door to pay, give you a check or to give you a USB drive, like I said earlier, and they slip and they fall. Well, if anybody else comes to your door and they slip and they fall, they would be covered under your homeowner's insurance. But if the homeowner's insurance finds out that that person was coming because they were a client and you're running a business and they slip and fell because it was a business matter, your home insurance will no longer cover it. So you need a special rider or a separate insurance for your business. And not just for that, like my insurance that I have for my business covers other things. Like say I have a print job done and the print job is a $10,000 print job and something happens that I messed up. It wasn't my client. It wasn't the printer. I messed up and my client refuses the job once it's been printed. I can't go back to the printer because it wasn't their problem. It was something that I did. Well, now I'm out. I have to reprint this job for my client, which is going to cost another $10,000. Well, I have business insurance that will help cover that sort of expense if it should ever happen. Now, I've been lucky, knock on wood, that I've never had to put a claim on my business insurance, but I've got the peace of mind of knowing that I am covered for that and so many other things. So definitely look into getting some business insurance. Some places will call it commercial insurance. But I know a lot of designers that don't have it and it is really something you should be looking at. And it's not as expensive as you think, especially if you have homeowner's insurance or tenant insurance if you're renting a place. It's not really that much more to add a special rider just to cover your business. So those are the things I wanted to talk about in what you need to get before starting your business. A business plan, register your business name, make sure you obtain a business permit for wherever you're going to operate, and look into business insurance. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the help that you should look into when you're starting a business. And starting a business can be a scary thing. Now, the good thing is that there are so many great resources to help you. And most of these resources, believe it or not, are actually free. And they're specifically there to help you start your business. The first thing I tell anybody who wants to start their business is go to your local municipality and first of all, see if there's a chamber of commerce. Your chamber of commerce is a huge wealth of information when it comes to doing your research, looking into what you need, and just everything about your business. Now, you can go and talk to them. Now, if you want to become a member, there's probably a fee involved, and I pay the fee every year to be a member of my local chamber of commerce. But even if you're not a member, you can still go in and talk to them and they will help you out. Now, if your area has some sort of economic development board, that's another great place to go to. And again, free resources or a business center. Maybe they have some sort of business center or a special division set up specifically for small businesses and to help them out. There's a lot of municipalities, cities, towns, communities that want small businesses to thrive. And they have special committees, special groups, special organizations that is their sole purpose, is to help with small businesses. And as I said, most of them are free resources because they're paid by the government. So look into them. There's nothing wrong. It doesn't cost you a cent, and they could really, really help you and point you in directions you didn't know. They can also help you sometimes get business loans if you need it, or even business grants, depending on your situation. I know the city where I am, there's a business enterprise center, and you can go there and they will tell you, and they will apply for grants and help you get money, free money, to help you start your business. Now, not everybody qualifies for that, but there's no harm in asking. Now, you can also check out what some people call business incubators, which is, again, similar to the business center that your municipality and government might run. But some of these business incubators might be privately run companies that will offer classes, give you advice, and some of them you might have to pay for, but they have really good resources again. And don't discount your local library. Your local library is usually a great resource with all sorts of information about starting a business. So those are some of the help that I'm talking about whenever you are looking into creating a business. And even if you've already got your business, maybe you want to expand, maybe you've been established for several years and you decide, well, you know what? I really could use some more equipment. Maybe I want to grow and buy a certain printer so that I can print some stuff off on my own here as opposed to farming stuff out to a printer or whatever. Contact these people. Maybe they can get you money. They can get you grants to help you purchase some of this equipment that you would need. Now, I talked earlier about lawyers and accountants. Definitely, before you start your business is the time to look into these. Find yourself a lawyer because you will need somebody to help you with your contracts. And if you are setting up a corporation, an LLC or anything like that, you will definitely want a lawyer involved. Well, actually, you need a lawyer involved to help file everything. So find yourself a good lawyer, do some research, ask around. There are lots of different business lawyers out there. So do your due diligence and find a good one that suits you, that deals with small businesses. It would be even beneficial if you found one that knew stuff about the graphic design industry. So find yourself a lawyer. Find yourself an accountant. I can't stress this one enough. I know in my first year, I tried to do my taxes on my own. I tried to save a few bucks and do my own taxes. And I eventually gave in because there are so many tax loops and tax holes and different ways in order to save money for your business and these rules change year after year. And it's just so much work to try to stay on top of them. It is well worth the money to hire an accountant to do your bookkeeping. I myself do my bookkeeping through the year, but when it comes time to tax time, that's when I contact my accountant and I give everything to him and they take care of it. And it's amazing what they can do in order to bring the amount that you would have to pay your government at the end of the year, the taxes you would owe, whether it's in Canada here to our government or to the IRS in the US or whatever. Getting a good accountant can really, really help your bottom line. Now, the other thing you should do is contact your bank. First of all, look at all the various banks. When I started my business, I looked at all the different banks that we had in town, weighed all the options because not all their business accounts were the same. Some of them had bigger yearly fees, but would offer a lot more. And anyways, they were just so different. I finally settled on one bank after doing my own research. And then I went in and I met with a bank manager. And again, this is free of charge. They're more than willing. If you're going to bring your business to them, they're more than willing to sit down and talk to you and tell you what the best things you need, how to set up your account, what type of account is best for your business, and other such things. And don't think that if you're just a sole proprietor, you're not incorporating, that you can just use your personal bank account. You definitely don't want to do that. First of all, any banking fees that you incur through a business bank account, you can claim those banking fees on your taxes. So why not do it anyways? But the reason is you want something. If somebody pays you and you have a business name, especially if you have a business name, if you're running under your own name, you could probably get away with it. But especially if you're running under a business name, you definitely want a business account because if somebody pays you by check and it's written out to your business name and you go to the bank and they say, well, what's this about? You could run into some issues. So definitely get a bank account under your business name. Not to mention if you need to write a check, because believe it or not, there's still some places out there that don't take credit cards and they'll insist on a check. It's a lot better to have a check with your company name on it as opposed to writing something from your personal account. Now, if you are incorporating your business, this one's a no-brainer. You do need a business account. You can't run a corporation under your personal bank account. Now, another great resource if you're looking into starting your business is look at your local community college. A lot of times they will have very inexpensive classes specifically on how to start and run a small business. And sometimes they might involve simplified accounting, marketing, dealing with clients, all sorts of little things like that. And sometimes they're just workshops. Maybe it's just a 2 or 3 day workshop over the course of a weekend, or sometimes it might be a semester at the local college going once a week for something. So look into those things. They are very, very beneficial. And another thing you could do is contact your community college or a local university and ask if there's any students that would help you research or write your business plan. There are business students there that would love to be able to help you, and you just pay them a few bucks and they'll help you. They'll sit down and write a proper business plan with you if it's something that you're not quite sure what to do. So you can always get help from business students from your local college or university. Now, there is a great website that has all sorts of information, including podcasts, and they have webinars, and it is US based. It's the Small Business Administration website in the US, which is sba.gov. Now, once again, I said it's US based, but I did look at it, and there's some really great information that applies whether you're in the US or not. So even me being in Canada and you may be outside of the US, there is a lot of information here that you could benefit from on this website. And again, I'll include a link to that in the show notes. So that's the information I wanted to share with you today. I had already talked about some things to consider before starting your business, but that was more once you got all this stuff out of the way. It was more dealing with the business itself. So I really wanted to do an episode talking about the things you needed to do before you got to that stage. And again, research, study up on tax laws, zoning laws, look up your competition, things you need to get before you start, which is a business plan, registering your business name, look into business permits and business insurance, and of course, getting help, because you don't have to do this on your own. Look at your local economic development board, your chamber of commerce. Maybe there's a business center. Maybe there's some business incubators around that you can contact and pay a small fee for them to help you out. Go to your local library, lots of resources there. Then you have to find yourself a good lawyer, an accountant, a bank manager in order to get those things underway before you start your business. You don't want to hire an accountant after you've been in a business a year to find out that you've been doing stuff wrong. Neither do you want to write up a contract on your own and think it's good enough without having a lawyer. It's well worth it to pay a lawyer a small fee to go over your contract and make sure that it is legally binding. Look into your local community college for inexpensive classes and workshops that they might offer on running and starting a small business, marketing. You may be a graphic designer, but you might still be able to learn some stuff about marketing a business from these classes. It's well worth it. Not to mention the whole networking. You go into a class about marketing a small business and you mention that you're a graphic designer. What do you think the other students that are starting other types of business? And part of the whole marketing class is creating professionally looking things, logo and all that. And they turn and they say, hey, there's a graphic designer right in the class with us. Why don't we talk to them? So that's a win-win in both situations. Not only do you gain some good knowledge about running your business, you can also gain some clients there. So check that out. And as I mentioned, you talk to your local community college and universities to see if there's anybody in some sort of business program that would be willing to help you write your business plan. They need the experience, and of course, if you fork a couple of dollars their way, they would appreciate it. And finally, as I said, there is the website sba.gov, which is the U.S. Small Business Administration. It is a great website. They do have other podcasts you can listen to. They do webinars. They have a lot of information about starting and growing your business. And check your local government sites. I know that Ontario has them. Canada has them. And I'm sure wherever you are, there are websites dedicated specifically to helping people start and grow a small business. So I hope this information was helpful. I would love to hear what you think. Please leave me a comment on the show notes page by visiting resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 48. And now, this week's question of the week comes from Danielle. Now, before I get to her question, I just want to let you know that my mailbag is almost empty. I've got a couple more questions left that I'll answer in future episodes. But now's the perfect time to get your question in if you have something you'd like me to answer. Simply visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and fill out the form with your question, and I'll try to feature it on a future episode of the podcast. And now Danielle's question. She says, I'm having a recurring issue that I need to solve as I do not want to face it anymore. The issue is how to properly store bookmarks for helpful websites, web apps, articles, and so on. I mean, we spend most of our time online and we use some great resources we need to keep track of and store safely for later use. I now have hundreds of bookmarks on Google Chrome divided in folders. Whilst Chrome does a good job of offering a search bar for a quick lookup, I found myself looking for an extended length of time as I would not remember how I called that folder or link. So I wonder if there's a better way than just save bookmarks on Chrome. Now, Danielle, I am glad you asked this question. I used to do something similar to you. I didn't use Chrome, I used Safari. I've been using Safari since macOS 10 first came out. And I have got an extensive list of bookmarks divided up into folders within folders. I have some for web design, for graphic design, personal stuff. I have articles, and each one of those folders, like my graphic design folder, would be divided up into Illustrator, Photoshop, printing articles, all sorts of different things. And then each one of those would be divided up. The Photoshop one would be divided into tutorials on this and that and all sorts of articles. And just like you said, it got really complicated to find stuff that you didn't use on a regular basis. If I wasn't familiar with that link, if it was just something I would think it's like, wow, I remember a website years ago that I visited, and I don't even remember if I bookmarked it or not. It would be forever going through those links. And I used to hate it. Then I discovered Evernote. Now, Evernote is another program, and you can get it by visiting evernote.com. And Evernote is a catch-all platform, is the way I describe it, where you can save notes, you can save videos, you can save emails, you can save websites, you can save anything you want in there. And the best thing about it is you can add tags to everything. So whenever I come across, say, I'm browsing the web. Now, Evernote can be used for so much more than this, but I use Evernote solely for my bookmarking now. Because the best thing about it is I can access it from everywhere. I have Evernote synced on my phone, on my iPad, on my computer, and I can access it from any computer in the world and access all my information. But the way I use it for bookmarking is anytime you get to a website and you have an article, it's really wonderful. There's a little plugin in the web browser. So in my case, it's Safari. There's plugins for Firefox, for Chrome, and I don't know what other browsers, but say I find a website with a really interesting article. I can click on the Evernote link, and then it gives me the choice of, first of all, I can just highlight text and it would only copy that text. So if I don't need the whole page, I only have one paragraph. Maybe it's a forum and somebody asked a question about something and then somebody replied to the question and that's a really good answer, something I really want to keep. I can just highlight that. And when I click on save to Evernote, it'll ask me, do you want to save just the selection? Do you want to save a simplified article, which I'll talk about in a second, or do you want to save the entire page? Well, say just the selection. I just want to save that paragraph where somebody had a good answer. I can then title that what it is, and then I get to add tags to it. So let's pretend it was a question somebody had about a certain plugin in WordPress, and it's a plugin I use all the time. And it was a problem that I've faced, so I want to remember this. So I would add tags to it and say, WordPress, that's one tag. Plugin, that's another tag. And then I would name what the plugin, I would name what the problem was, and I can add as many tags as I want. Later, if I ever need to find this again, as long as I could type in WordPress plugin and then the problem, boom, there's that simplified copied paragraph. Now, the other things you can do with Evernote is copy a simplified article is what they call it. And what that does is say you're reading an article. If you say save to Evernote, just the simplified article, it takes just the wording of that article. If there's photos involved in it, in the article, they will be there. But any sort of header on the page, the sidebar, ads that were added in by Google or whatever, and the footer is all gone. All you have is the article that you're reading. And that's what I do most of the time is I would save a simplified article. And again, you add all the tags to it. And the other option is to save the entire website. If you want to save the entire page, sorry, not website, but entire page for something, you can save it there. Now, the great thing about Evernote is you can actually review these offline. So if you're not connected to the internet in any way, you can look at these pages, but they always have a link. So say you want to see it on the actual web page, you can simply click on it. And it doesn't matter if you copied a selection, the simplified article, or the entire page. You can link back to the original page where it was. And I have to tell you, Danielle, since I started using Evernote for bookmarking like this, I have never gone to my bookmarks in Safari since. It is just so much easier this way. If ever I have to find anything, I simply launch Evernote, start typing in what I'm searching for, and because of all the tags, and you can put as many tags as you want on something in order to make it easier to find. Like here, if I call up Evernote right now on my screen, I could put in a tag, say, Photoshop, Fire, and Type. And here's a really great tutorial I'd found a few years ago on how to make type look like it's burning in Photoshop, a realistic effect of looking like the type is on fire. And when I saw this article, I loved it. I said, you know what? Someday I'm going to need to do this. And I saved it to Evernote. And you know what? I did end up using this. About 8-9 months ago, I had to do something and I called up this tutorial. And the funny thing is this was a tutorial going back, it doesn't say here, but the tutorial was not the most recent version of Photoshop. It's actually like going back to like version 7 or 8 or something like that. So some of the things have changed, but I was able to go through it and I created the flame on the type that I needed. And it was so easy because I was able to find it here. And if I was to go back through my bookmarks in Safari and try to find this page, which I know was in my bookmarks, I originally had it there. If I was to go back and try to find it, it would have been really tough. I could have looked under Photoshop. I would have looked under tutorials. I would have looked under, I don't know if it was under typography or if it was under effects, or I had it divided up in a whole bunch of different ways. And it would have been pretty tough to find. But in Evernote, I was able to find this in 2-3 seconds. All I had to do was type in a few of my tag words and the article popped up. So I don't know if that answers your question, Danielle. I'm sure there's other options for bookmarking, but myself, since I discovered Evernote and I started using it and I rely on it on just about everything, I use Evernote to keep track of all my information for the podcast. Anytime I find an article or anything that I think might be interesting or might be a good idea for an episode, I save it to Evernote. And Evernote is divided up into notebooks. So I have a notebook for the podcast. I have a notebook for my business. I have a notebook called Bookmarks. And I will put all my web bookmarks in there. And the great thing about it is the bookmark, it doesn't matter if it was made in Safari, in Chrome, in Firefox, they all go into Evernote and it all works out the same. So there's no confusion about what web browser you use, because sometimes there's certain things I use Firefox for and there's certain things I use Safari. I use Safari, I'd say 90% of the time, but there are about 10% of the time where I'll use Firefox. So some of my bookmarks are in Firefox and some of them are in Safari. Now I know there's ways that you can sync them all across everything, but I haven't done that. But in Evernote, I don't have to. And Evernote is also great when I go to a conference and people give you business cards. I don't have to keep the business card. I can just take my phone, take a snapshot of the business card, put it in Evernote with some tags on what conference I met this person, what this person said, what they had to do. Because sometimes somebody will give you a business card and the business card is not necessarily about the topic you were talking about. So this way I can add notes without having to write on the back of the business card and possibly losing that. I have this all in Evernote and I can easily call it up and find it at any time. Now, I have paid for the premium version of Evernote, which allows me a lot more information to be stored. And to be honest, I'm not sure what what the extra features are. But when I was using it on such a regular basis, I use Evernote every single day. I just decided it was worth paying for the premium. Now, if it's something you want to get into or you want to check out, there's a really, really great resource. It's the book about Evernote. If you already use Evernote, but you don't use it on a regular basis or not sure if it's full extent, I highly suggest you get the book, Evernote Essentials. And I do have an affiliate link to that because I love the book. Just visit resourcefuldesigner.com/Evernote Essentials. And I'll include a link to that in the show notes for this episode as well. And yes, I do get a very small commission if you purchase the book through that link, but it walks you step by step, whether you're on a Mac or a PC or on your phone. It walks you step by step on everything you could do with Evernote. And I learned so much. I was already an Evernote user before I got this book. And when I got the book, I realized how much I was missing out because I wasn't using Evernote to its full potential. So as I mentioned, Danielle, there might be other options. There's maybe some plugins for Chrome that'll help you organize and save your bookmarks, but then you're limited to Chrome. With something like Evernote, it doesn't matter what web browser. If one day I decide I don't like using Safari, I want to use Firefox, I want to use Chrome, or something brand new comes out and I want to use it, everything is saved under Evernote, so I never have to worry about it. So that is what I would say is your best option for saving and organizing bookmarks, because with the tags, you can add as many tags as you want to it. It makes it so easy to call something up later and quickly find it and get to it and save you that time of having to search. So that's my answer to this week's question. Hope it helped you, Danielle. Now, in next week's episode, I'm going to be talking about something that's been asked of me over and over. A lot of you have asked me to expand more on print brokering. You know, I mention it from time to time on the podcast, how I supplement my design income through print brokering. Well, a lot of you have asked me to go a little bit deeper. So I'm going to devote an entire episode on what's involved, how to get into it, and all aspects of print brokering to supplement your graphic design business. So I do look forward to discussing that with you in the next episode of the podcast. Until then, please visit this week's resource of the week, haveibeenpwned.com. And again, pwned is spelled PWNED. Please visit that, enter your email address, and just do a search to make sure that your email address hasn't been compromised through some sort of website breach somewhere. And share that link with other people you know. It's all about security. And if you're on Facebook and you haven't joined already, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/group and ask to join the Facebook group. We would love to have you there. Until next time, I am Mark DeCote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business. And as always, reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.